Welcome to a Healthy Push podcast. I'm Shannon Jackson, former anxiety sufferer turned adventure mom and anxiety recovery coach. I struggled with anxiety, panic disorder, and agoraphobia for 15 years. And now I help people to push past the stuff that I used to struggle with. Each week, I'll be sharing real and honest conversations along with actionable and practical steps that you can take to help you push past your anxious thoughts, the symptoms, panic, and fears. Welcome. You're right where you're meant to be. All right, we have a Q&A episode with Annie. Hi, Annie.
Hi, happy to be here.
These are like my favorite. And
Oh,
I
they're so
think
fun.
they are so fun. And it's so nice just to be able to chat and not have it feel like I just have to talk or that I have to like interview someone. So this is
Yeah, you
this
get
is
kind
nice.
of interviewed.
Yeah. I get interviewed, but it feels very just conversational.
Yeah.
So this one we decided we're going to do very specifically geared toward panic and agoraphobia. And we got some really good questions. So I'm excited to dig into them.
Mhm.
So we're going to chat like panic attacks, feeling stuck. What do you do? Like, we're going to get into some nitty gritty stuff. So I'll hand it over to you. Let's get started.
Okay, yeah, so I'm really excited. There are so many good questions. Like, I already kind of looked at them, and a lot of these are things that I feel like I would have asked you at one point when I was really struggling, but let's just jump in. The first question is, why do I feel like I need to escape places that are hard, quote unquote, hard to escape?
Yeah. Oh, this is like panic disorder and agoraphobia, right? So it's
Mhm.
probably because you feel stuck and trapped. And this is how anxiety makes you feel stuck, trapped, not in control. Like, and if you've experienced panic attacks, right, or just a lot of anxiety where you have those really awful sensations and symptoms, it can make you feel like, oh God, I can't feel this way here, like in this place or in this situation. So I really say it comes down to you're afraid to feel, which makes sense. To feel anxious, to feel certain sensations or symptoms, or to panic. And so paired with this, you might have had past experiences, right? Where you have actually felt really anxious or had a panic attack, like standing in line at the grocery store or while you're at work or driving on a specific road. And these memories, right, can really scare us and stick with us and make us feel like whenever I'm in this place or situation, like who knows what could happen. So I think this is it it makes perfect sense why you feel like you need to escape places that are hard to escape because you're trying to brace yourself and not feel anxious. You're trying not to panic. So I know, of course, how this feels. You don't want to be in places and situations that are hard to get out of. You don't want to feel, you especially don't want to panic, but you can't really get away from it. And you don't really need to, that sort of thing, right? We tell ourselves with these stories like, I'm stuck, I'm trapped, I can't get out. Oh my gosh, this is so bad.
Mhm.
And of course, before you know it, it starts to get worse. But it's like, we don't need to get away. We don't need to escape. What we need to do is slow things down and
Yeah.
actually work on letting ourselves feel what we're feeling without trying to fix and go down all the rabbit holes. So I always say a big part of why you find yourself like really wanting to escape is because you're really stuck mentally. You're stuck in your brain. You're not responding to your thoughts and feelings in the healthiest way. You're creating all these stories, you're going along with them. Like you're trying to prevent yourself from feeling, which is something that you really can't do. So, this is why a huge part in everything that I teach, my classes, my Panic to Peace program, we work so much with your thoughts and the stories and how you can start to respond in a more healthy way to these things because this is the crux of recovery. Like when you change your response to your thoughts, your feelings, to the mental stuff that's going on, that's where you really start to feel less trapped, less stuck. Um, I know for myself, especially in a lot of my students, when you feel this need to escape, you often have a lot of the what if thoughts going on. Like, what if I totally freak out? What if I have a panic attack? What if I embarrass myself? What if I pass out? Like, the what
Mhm.
ifs are going crazy. And I always say, Ray, you've got to slow things down and work on responding to those in a healthy way, because that can really help you tons with the feelings, and with that, the stuck trapness. So I recently did that masterclass, Freedom from Your What If Thoughts. If you really battle with what if thinking, that class will be so freaking helpful for you. So I'll throw that in there. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's not, it makes sense, right? You wanna escape places that aren't easy to escape because you're trying not to feel. Like, that's really the crux of it.
Yeah. I mean, that really is the nature of, like, a panic attack is feeling like you need to get out, and, unfortunately, like, it's one of the hardest parts is just telling yourself you don't have to, and then eventually over time, you just kind of realize, and it's like, I don't know, it's just so weird. Even now, I'm like, "When did I kind of realize I don't have to escape?" It just kinda happened, so
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
anyway, our next question, why do I still feel like running from the feelings and emotions when anxiety pops up?
Ugh. Okay, so for me, this person has probably been practicing some healthy responses, and they probably feel frustrated, right? Because they're like, why do I still feel like running? Like,
Mhm.
I shouldn't still feel this way. Like, I've been doing a lot of work surrounding, maybe making more space for anxiety, letting myself feel. And I say, very simply, you are feeling alarmed, you're feeling scared, and you feel like running because you're human. Like, this response, right, pops up, and you know, all of this physiological stuff happens that sends all these signals, right? And they're designed to make you want to run, to actually take action, to do something. And that's the trickiest part about when you're struggling with panic disorder and agoraphobia, is it's all these false alarms, but they of course still make you feel like you need to run.
Yeah.
So it's makes sense. Like, of course you want to run from the feelings, from the emotions. And I would say the other reason why you feel like running is because you've probably been running for months
Mhm.
or years or decades. And that's very ingrained. Like, that response is very ingrained. And so anytime you feel anxiety, you're like, oh shit, I've got to run. I got to do something. I got to get away from this. Your
Yeah.
brain really has been trained to run from anxiety. So it's like the two part, right? Like, it makes sense. You're human. This physiological response is happening. Of course, you feel like you want to run, and then you've been doing it probably for a while. You've probably been running from your thoughts and your feelings for a while. So it makes sense. So,
Yeah.
you know, I know it's tricky, because sometimes with a lot of people who join Panic to Peace, they're like, "No, I've really been practicing, like, staying with the feelings of anxiety. I've really tried making space for it. Like, I feel like I'm doing a good job." But when we really get into things, we start to see that that's not actually the case, that they're
Yeah.
still performing lots of actions and behaviors, and really getting into the thoughts and going down all the what if rabbit holes, and they don't even really realize that they're doing it. So
Yeah.
it can be hard, like, to really start paying attention and having more awareness, and slowing things down. And, quite honestly, I say, I don't it's hard because, I haven't been struggling for almost a decade now with panic and agoraphobia. So it's sometimes hard for me to remember. But I honestly think I probably always felt like running. Like, I don't think I ever really took that part away. You know what I mean? Because it's like
Mhm.
we're, like, physiologically hardwired to wanna run,
Yeah.
especially when you're experiencing panic. So, you might always sort of feel like running. You may sort of always have that impulse, that, like, initial reaction, and that's why I talk so much about slowing down and, really just practicing to stay as best you can. That's really what counts the most.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, for me too, is just kind of accepting that that feeling is the part of having the panic attack itself, just like
Mhm.
any other symptom, like getting sweaty or out of breath is just that feeling like you need to run. And for me, like, it's really hard when you think about a panic attack in and of itself as a whole thing. But if you just take it 10 seconds at a time, 30 seconds at a time, it becomes much more doable. And as you practice, again, it's just one of those things for sure. But our
Yeah,
next question.
I'm glad you said that. I think it just can be really frustrating, and it's important to recognize that. Like, yeah, of course it's frustrating. It's
Mhm.
frustrating that you're like, even though you may, now be practicing like having a healthy response to anxiety, it takes a little bit to rewire those pathways in your brain,
Yeah,
which, having that grace with yourself goes a really long way.
definitely. And yeah, it's like one thing that's so helpful for me too to remember is just that it's like so not linear. Like once I
Mhm.
like really reminded myself of that, I'm like, okay, like there's going to be times where going down the street is really hard and there's going to be times when I can go 30 minutes and feel fine and you know, it's just learning how to manage when it does pop up and it doesn't mean anything about you or what you're capable of.
Yeah.
That to me is
Yeah.
one of
Or
the
your
biggest.
recovery journey. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, spot on.
exactly. Gosh. Yeah. Well, our next question is how do you find the courage to keep going when you get a panic attack? Which is such a good question.
Ugh, this one is rough, right? Like,
Mhm.
I had a panic attack and I just like, gosh, it takes a lot out of you. It can be
Yeah.
scary. Um, you can really feel like, yep, like game over. So I totally get this question. I think the reality, right, is that you don't really, quote, "find courage." Like, you're not just gonna I don't know, you don't find it and it doesn't somehow just land in your lap. I think,
Mm,
courage always comes from taking action. Like, it
yeah,
requires action in order to come. So, it means, just taking one small step. Maybe it's, you had the panic attack and your next small step, right, is okay, I'm gonna just let this be. I'm not gonna try to figure out why I had it or what the heck happened. I'm just gonna do some healthy redirection, like let me get present. Or my other favorite thing is how can I talk to myself, my self talk? I think self talk is something that I talk about a lot because it's something you always have control of. And it's something that can actually help you to feel like supported and like you can act more courageously. So I think, reminding yourself we've been here before, right? We've had panic attacks. We've always worked through them. Like we got through it and now we're going to keep going. Um
yeah.
sometimes it's like I would always love to know a little bit more about what this person's thinking because there are so many
Mhm.
different ways I could take this question. But sometimes honestly, it's you have a panic attack and maybe it's really bad and like really horrendous and it just like
Mhm.
takes everything out of you. And so maybe the courage is to actually like just slow down and stop and let yourself do nothing. Like
Yeah,
it's not trying to keep powering through and to keep doing whatever it is that you're doing. It's to actually say like, no, I need a minute. Like I can't keep going. I can't keep doing.
yeah,
Um, because typically, right, when you get a panic attack, it can be just those false alarms. And it doesn't really make sense, but sometimes it's your body like sending some signals of like, hey, we need you to pump the
yeah.
brakes a little bit. So yeah, I think it's tough because I get but it's not we're gonna find courage. We have to take steps to actually build
Mhm.
that courageousness.
Yeah, and that's a tough thing because just realizing you don't need the courage to take the healthy action. That was one of
Yeah.
the big things for me as well, and I have also found that for myself, the courage usually comes after I do the thing, and don't get me wrong, I've had panic attacks that have made it harder and that have been really difficult to work through. But I've also had panic attacks where once I have them, gosh, like we were talking even before we got onto the podcast about this. I had a panic attack last night, and it was one of those panic attacks where I just slowed down. I was out getting frozen yogurt and I just let it happen, and then after it happened, I felt like I could take on the world because I knew that I just allowed it, and I proved to myself that I was totally fine.
Yeah. That's very coincidental that you had a panic attack
Yeah,
last night.
I know, I was like, "Perfect, gives me something to talk about tomorrow," but, yeah, I think that it's just so important to remember that you don't need the courage, sometimes it's okay to do it scared, and that's when the real healing happens.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm glad you threw that in there. That's so good.
Well, let's move on to our next question, which is, how can I expand my safe space?
Oh my
Which is
gosh.
a good one.
Yeah,
This is
this
something I
is
would have asked at one point for
oh my
sure.
goodness. Yeah, and I feel like, honestly, it's, like, one of the first questions that people will ask me when we dig into panicked peace, and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Nope. We
Yeah.
have some work to do before we get there." But okay, so I have so many thoughts on this.
Mhm,
First off, I hate the term safe space. Like, ugh, I really hate it. I get it, but I hate it because really it's not your safe space, it's your comfort space. And I think
mhm,
when you shift that mentality, because your comfort space is actually not keeping you safe, it's just keeping you comfortable. So we often get stuck into these safe zones, right? Quote safe zones where we convince ourselves, I'm okay as long as I'm within this area, as long as I don't go outside this area. And for some people, it's just outside of their homes. For some people, it's outside of a certain radius. It's doing certain things. So I'd much rather you refer to this as your comfort space because you can see, like, it's not that I'm quote safe when I keep myself in this zone, it's that I'm keeping myself comfortable. And then we can actually work on expanding that comfort zone. So, of
mhm.
course, expanding your comfort zone means consistently taking small steps to push yourself outside of it. But often people will translate this as okay, then I need to drive that street. I need to drive, a mile outside of my s- safe space. I need to go to that store that's not within my safe space. It can be that, but it doesn't just translate to that stuff. So, something helpful for me to recognize when I was recovering, it was that anything that was uncomfortable for me would actually help to build my tolerance for discomfort. So it
Yeah.
didn't necessarily mean just things solely relating to anxiety. It literally could mean like saying hi to a stranger on the street. I think that can
Mhm.
be uncomfortable for a lot of people. It can mean going somewhere alone where a lot of us don't normally do things alone very often.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe for you, it's more the opposite of, like, doing something with somebody because you normally do a lot of things alone.
Yeah.
Trying something new, like, all of these little ways that you can challenge yourself to be less comfortable, these
Yeah.
things translate over to when you're doing things that cause you anxiety. So and two, it can be just, right, letting yourself be with your not so great, helpful, healthy thoughts and feelings. It can be, just very simplistic ways. Slowing down is uncomfortable for a lot of people. A lot of people with anxiety are used to just going, 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 doing, 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 and they think, right, they can um, like do their way out of feeling anxious. So I always say, whatever ways that you can allow yourself to consistently expand that comfort zone, it will be incredibly helpful. And this is stuff that I still do. Like, it wasn't I recovered and now I don't ever push myself, right? Because we all have comfort zones that need to continue to be expanded. So, my big thing this year is doing more stuff on my own, like going on more trips, doing more things outside of my comfort zone. Like, this past week I went to the gym, which is like, that's
Right.
that is just not a comfort thing for me. Like, I don't ever go, and there's a lot of people, and it's like
Yeah.
overwhelming. So, for me, it's, I work from home, of course. So it's like pushing myself. I going to coffee shops isn't that big of a deal, but, going to new places, pushing myself to meet new people, going to events. Like, I'm trying to do more on my own, which is uncomfortable. But what I'm saying, right, is we all have to continuously work on expanding our comfort zones. So it's not your safe space. And you know what, another big thing that's helpful to recognize, and I think, we've talked about this, Annie, is that you will come to see, at some point in your recovery journey, that the irony is that you're actually your safe space. Like, you
Mhm.
are, like, always with yourself, and you can trust yourself and rely on yourself, but obviously when you're struggling with an anxiety disorder, you don't exactly feel that way. But
Yeah.
the truth is, right, with everything that you do, even outside of this safe zone, like, you are the person that gets you through it. You're the person that always works through the feelings. And so you're carrying that safety with you at all times. And that's what we really work on in my
Yeah.
program, Panic to Peace, is like, let's put that safe and trust back within you, back within your body. And, but yeah, like I said, we don't even dive into like exposure related stuff until module 5, which is like over halfway through the program, because there's a lot of things that you do before then that helps to build that trust and that safety back within you so that you can actually like feel capable of doing some of the other stuff.
Yeah, I love how you said that because it really is more so about the comfort zone. And
Mhm.
like that's just something I've even started to realize with myself is that when you do little things, like it doesn't even have to be a lot. Maybe it's just doing a workout or going for a walk by yourself. Like it really can be so empowering. And that goes a long way to when you are doing the things that are tough and you can remind yourself, okay, wow, like I've done this before. Like one thing I've been loving to do is just run, even like on a treadmill. And I'm like, okay, like I feel really activated right now, but I just ran 5 miles like yesterday and I was fine doing that. So I can handle this. And it really just builds from there. And I just love the way you said that because it really is about the comfort zone. And regardless of whether you're struggling with an anxiety disorder, like that is just something that I think everyone should strive to do is, expand their comfort zones and it's
Yeah.
important regardless, so I love that, but
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. Okay, so our next question is, how can I navigate the immense dread I feel before I leave the house?
Probably not gonna love this answer.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, I think you've gotta let yourself acknowledge it's there, you've gotta let yourself feel it. I know so many people feel this dread, right? And it's really tough because it's like, of course you're feeling it. You're probably leaving the house, you're probably anticipating how much anxiety you're gonna feel, you're probably anticipating how it might go, whether or not you're gonna panic.
mhm,
And this can be really hard because before you even leave the house, you're probably already feeling anxious. So of course, like the dread is there. Um, I think an important thing, right, is allowing yourself to feel it, saying it makes sense that I'm feeling this, but not going along with the stories that your mind is creating about how things will look once you step outside your front door. Because that's really what's generating a lot of the dread is the anticipation and painting the picture, right, of how it's gonna look. It's this is gonna be so hard. This is gonna be awful. I'm probably gonna like all the things, right? So slowing things down, not going along with the stories, and, just allowing yourself to feel the dread and then say, "Okay, it's okay. We can feel this way," and allowing yourself just to take a step. Like, take a step, keep taking, small steps, and try to just stay focused on the step that you're taking. Like,
yeah,
just get out the front door. Okay, now just get in the car, whatever it is, and this is something too that we work a lot in the program because I find that people often experience a lot of dread too because they're going at their recovery in this very forceful, like not
mhm,
fun or kind way. And I'm like,
yeah,
no wonder why you're experiencing so much dread. Like, you are doing all this stuff that you don't even really value. Like, this stuff is
mhm,
not even really meaningful to you. Like, you're just going through the motions to
yeah,
check off the boxes. It's like, we don't need to do stuff that doesn't feel good, just the monotony, just to do it, to say that we're working on recovering. Like,
Yeah.
we really in the program tap into like, what are the things that you can do? What are the steps that you can take that are going to be meaningful for you and are allowing you to go toward things that you value? And I think when you make that shift, like a lot of that dread starts to dissipate. So, yeah, there are a couple things I think the really helpful things that you can do with dread, but it's definitely a tough one to feel and navigate.
Yeah, I mean, that was something I really struggled with in the beginning too, is just like I remember like when I was in Panic to Peace, it was so helpful, but I ended up saying, okay, every day I'm going to leave the house just to do something I enjoy. Maybe it's to go sit in the sun or to go to the park with my dogs or whatever. And in the beginning, it would be almost every day I'd wake up and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I have to go do that." And
Mm,
it was so tough, but eventually like I just said, "Okay, I'm putting this in my pocket. I'm taking this with me." And that's okay that it's there. That's part of the process. And eventually, it's really, really improved for me over the past few months. And so it's a hard thing, but just letting it be there can be so
mhm.
tricky. But when you do, it kind of just alleviates a lot of those feelings for me
Yeah.
personally. So
Yeah. I know. We don't wanna let the hard stuff be there, but it's a
I know.
big part of what helps them to pass.
Right? It's so challenging, but yeah, for me, I know for a lot of people too, like it does get better. So,
Yeah.
our next question is leading into what I was
Oh
just saying.
gosh.
Um, when does it get easier? How many exposures and how much do you have to put yourself through the panic until it gets easier?
Oh, okay, I can feel this person's
Yeah,
frustration. Um, I get it. This is another really good question, and it makes so much sense, and it's one I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I answered this in my free class. So
yeah,
my 5 shifts you need to overcome anxiety, panic, and agoraphobia. We'll link to that in the show notes, but if you haven't yet taken that class, you have to take that class because people asked a lot of good questions, and I answered a lot of their questions there, and I answered this one there, but of course, we'll dive into it because this is a good one.
mhm,
So, it is not about the number of exposures. It's not about doing 100 or 1,000. You can literally do hundreds, thousands of exposures. And of course, it depends on what it looks like. What does the exposure look like? How are you actually responding to your thoughts, feelings? Like, there's so much there that also matters. But what I want to say here, because I did a whole episode on exposures. So if you haven't listened to that, you've got to listen to that. But it's not you do a set amount of exposures and then voila, you're healed. Because if that's the way it worked, so many people wouldn't be struggling. So it's really, you know, the second part of this too, I should say before I go on. The second part, because I love how this person said, how much do you have to how much panic basically do you have to put yourself through? And it's like, no, 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 it's not about
yeah,
putting yourself through the panic either. Because I know a lot of people who have come to me, I've worked with through my classes, program, whatever, one on one coaching, and they truly think like, I just have to make myself panic and I have to panic repeatedly and then I get better. And it's like, oh gosh.
yeah,
Um, you s no, okay? Like, we don't
right,
have to, this is not about just making yourself panic and then you just stop panicking at some point, because the truth and reality is, some people are experiencing the panic for different reasons. It's not always just because your system's activated, and so it makes sense that you're constantly in this fight or flight. Some people are experiencing it for very different reasons, so it's not like a one size fits all approach to this either. But I don't want anyone to think it's just about, I've got to make myself panic and then that's how I get better. Definitely expanding that comfort zone, right? And building your tolerance for feeling is a part of it. But there's so much more. There's so much more. It's, really about getting better at making space for anxiety, letting yourself feel, supporting yourself. Um, I have to say, I've worked with hundreds of people through my classes and through my program. And I can't tell you how many people who have got to that recovered space and then say, whoa. I can't believe that was what I was missing. I can't
Yeah,
believe that's what was so helpful for me. It wasn't the exposure work. It wasn't making myself panic. It was actually changing my self-talk or setting boundaries or having more compassion with myself. It
yeah,
was feeling stuff that I've been trying to run from for years that's not even related to anxiety. It's grief. The list goes on and on. There are
yeah,
so many people that, like I said, you can do the exposure work all day long, but if there are other things, right, that you're just like not willing to look at, not willing to heal, um, it's sort of going to be like just a lot of stress and even more anxiety than you're putting on your plate. So,
yeah,
yeah, I really like this is a there's so much here to this. But I really like delved into exposures in an episode. And so if you haven't listened to that episode and you're more curious about exposure work, I want to encourage you to listen to that because exposure work is a part of it, but
yeah.
it's not definitely all of it.
Yeah,
Um,
there's so much. There's so
yeah.
much. And oddly enough, I remember when I first came across your page, gosh, almost 2 years ago now, you had a
Oh.
Q&A box on your Instagram story, and this is the question that I asked. I said, "How long is this gonna take?" And it's so funny because I feel like as you really work towards recovery, like, your whole mindset changes, and now I'm like, I know it's not linear. I know there's so much that goes into it, and it's not just, like, a thing with a timeline on it, and I love how you mentioned there's so much. Like for me, there's a lot of like suppressed emotions and other things. And, you
Mhm.
know, there's so many factors. And as you go on, like you will find that for yourself too. And it's just something you can't put a timeline on, but it's so true. I
Yeah.
just love you for that.
I just hate so much of the messaging out there that's like, you just gotta panic and you just gotta do the
Yeah.
hard stuff. And it's like, goodness gracious, that those messages can be so harmful because it one makes you feel like you're not already doing that, which is like
Yeah.
you're already doing that. Like you're already feeling anxious a lot and panicking and you're already facing that. And that's really hard. So it's not really that you don't have the skills, like, to handle the
No.
panic. It's like there are a lot of other areas that we need to look at that actually is gonna help to calm your nervous system, to build that confidence and trust within yourself, and it's not through repeated exposures. Like, I've not worked with a person so far that it's been, "Oh, they just did exposures, and then that's how they healed." Like, not
Yeah.
one person. That has not been one person's story. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
and also too, I have to say, like, it truly like, it gets easier when you have all of the knowledge, the skills, and the tools. And,
Yeah.
I know what it's like for so long. Everyone was throwing coping skills at me and all these like hacks and just trying to help me like literally in the best way possible, but I there was so much that I didn't know and so much that I didn't understand and like people just didn't equip me with the healthiest mentality and the healthiest approach. And so it really gets easier when you can, learn from somebody who knows and can show you and really help and support you. And I think the other part, right, is it gets easier when you put less pressure on yourself, kind of like you were saying. Like it's not linear and we can't just force it. And we can't just make you recover by like forcing you to get there. It's, a lot more kindness and compassion. So, yeah, I need to like I wish I had a billboard for this one. Like stop trying to exposure your way to recovery.
Yeah.
Ah,
I know it can be so tough too, because like, and it also, like you said, it can really be invalidating too. Like, I mean,
yeah.
even just with like, I know a lot of therapists who, it's like even they don't like fully understand that it's not just all about the exposures and stuff. And it's like, it really is so much about your self talk. Like you always say, it's like, how are you talking to yourself when you feel anxious? And that is such a huge part of it. Like,
Yeah,
people forget. It's
it's
like,
all these things that support us, like, we don't recognize,
yeah.
like, all these little ways that we can support ourselves actually helps our system to recognize, okay, like we don't
Yeah.
need to be at level 10 all the time and we can actually relax a bit. And then not only start experiencing anxiety less, and two, you feel more equipped to handle it when you do feel it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Like, I remember hearing you talk and being like, "Shannon, like, how is eating, like, breakfast instead of having coffee, like, and no breakfast, like, how is that gonna help me not have a panic attack?" And it's like, yeah, in and of itself, that might not be the solution, but when you couple that with exercising and all these other tools that really help you, it is insane. Like, I've just noticed even in the past few months, like, how much of a difference when you just find the things that work for you and putting them
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
You just hit the nail on the
Yeah.
head. It's finding what works for you
Yeah.
and not thinking that it all needs to be these external things. It's not, that's such a sticky place. Right? People will come to me and they'll say, I meditate, I do yoga, I eat well, I
Yeah.
do breath work, I journal. And I'm just like, okay,
That would make me anxious doing all that.
can we reel back? Because I get
Yeah,
it. That's a lot of the messaging we've gotten, right? Like, throw all the things at it, go at it, all
yeah,
these coping skills, and yeah, it's just like that's not really the stuff. All this external stuff just pushes you further away from your own knowing and your own skills and abilities, and creates that really lack of distrust and
yeah,
confidence. And so, yeah, I mean, I could go on and on with this one.
yeah.
It could be its
No,
own
same.
class. Yeah. But I think, overall, there's so much that I like dig into, of course, in my classes, in my program. But, if you're really struggling with like symptoms and panic attacks, I have a very specific class, Overcoming the Symptoms and Panic Attacks. It's a master class where we really go over, like, practically how to do this, like, what's actually supportive and helpful. And it's not all the stuff that you've heard, right, a million times. Just carry a bag with you and like
Yes.
breathe and meditate and like, oh my God,
Oh,
please
boy.
stop.
Yeah,
And also, like I mentioned, if you struggle with a lot of anxious thoughts and you're always anticipating and you have a lot of the what ifs, like that freedom from what ifs masterclass will be incredibly helpful for you. Because I know with the worst part of all the anxious thoughts, the what if thoughts, is the feelings. Like, you have
yeah,
so many sensations and symptoms, and it just is like this cycle, like repeat, repeat, repeat. You have the thought, you have the feeling, more thoughts, more feelings. And it's just like, so that class would be really helpful. And then Panic to Peace is my 10-week program where like we dig into all of it. It's like we're going to
mhm,
actually figure out what is going on and what's going to
yeah,
be helpful for you, and build that trust and belief back within you, and actually help you to see you are your safe space. You've always been. Like, we just need to let you
yeah,
actually see that. So the doors to that program will be opening again later this year in September 2024. And it's my favorite thing to teach. And if you're on my waiting list, you'll get early access, you get a really awesome bonus, and you also get a really special discount. So if you've been interested, I've seen some of you, like, you've been on my waiting list a couple times. Like, this is your gentle nudge. Like,
mhm,
this is your time. And, just make sure, like, a lot of where these questions are coming from, right, is because people have been struggling for so long and they get all this recycled information, like all these recycled tips, like just do this, just do that. And like, that is not anything that I teach. We are not like
mhm.
meditating, breathing, doing all the things like to
Yeah,
get
no thanks.
anxiety. We're like, yeah, we're creating the
Yeah,
healthy relationship with anxiety and a healthy relationship with you so that you can actually find the peace and the joy and the freedom. So,
yes. I
that
know, I mean, gosh, it's been I think I took Panic to Peace a year ago, and it has truly like, I still refer back when I have, like, tough moments. I still have the workbook, I have the binder printed out, I'll just whip it out, and I'll be like, "Okay, that's what I needed. I can go on with my day now." So, it's
yeah,
been so helpful for me too, personally, like, I truly don't know where I would be without it. I've learned so much from Panic to Peace that you just don't see in a lot of places. Like,
yeah,
more people
yeah,
need to be talking about this. It's
I know.
amazing, so
Well, thank you,
I'm a
Annie.
fan.
I think, you know, I just, I wish that all of this stuff was stuff that I could have heard back when I was struggling because I
Yeah.
wouldn't have struggled for friggin' 15 years and it wouldn't have been so hard and frustrating and awful. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll put all the links to these in the show notes. But I just want to encourage you, keep taking the steps, like, even when it feels like they're not doing anything, they are doing so much, and you just need to keep taking the small steps every day. It will get you to where you want to go.
Yeah.
All right, until next time, Annie, we'll talk soon.
Yes.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of A Healthy Push. If you want more, head on over to ahealthypush.com for the show notes and lots more tips, tools, and inspiration that will support your recovery. And if you're hoping for me to cover a certain topic, be sure to join my Instagram community at A Healthy Push and let me know in the comments what you want to hear next.